Good evening. You're watching the News at 6 with me, Ishan Russell. The News at 6 is about the day's biggest developing stories. And the big development that happened today, Delhi got its Chief Minister. Arvind Kejriwal took oath of office and he has a new cabinet in place. So what's in store for the Delhi government? What was his message to the people of Delhi? We'll be talking about that with a special guest. Apart from a host of other stories that have happened from India and around the world, we'll be getting you that over the next half hour. But first, the headlines we're tracking right now. Cheered on by thousands of supporters, Arvind Kejriwal takes oath as the 8th Chief Minister of Delhi, promises to fight corruption while holding no portfolio. Prime Minister inaugurates GE's manufacturing hub in Pune, promises series of reforms while announcing easier entry for investors in the hospitality sector. India successfully test fires the 290-kilometer range BrahMos supersonic cruise missile from Navy's newest destroyer, INS Kolkata, launch described as flawless. The Ukrainian ceasefire pact is under siege. 25 people killed in ferocious battles as Russian-backed forces launch assault on border town. And in the Cricket World Cup, host Australia and New Zealand win their first matches easily against England and Sri Lanka, respectively. Well, top story this evening. Aam Aadmi Party convener Arvind Kejriwal was sworn in as Delhi's Chief Minister by Lieutenant Governor Najib Jung at the Ramlila Maidan today. At a ceremony that stood out for sheer audience participation, Kejriwal said it was a miracle that people from all castes and classes voted for the Aam Aadmi Party in such huge numbers.
For the second time in 2 years, Arvind Kejriwal took oath as the Delhi's Chief Minister at the Ramlila Maidan. The ceremony on Valentine's Day was marked by a trademark fiery speech, in the course of which he made many promises. Among them was the pledge to run the government with a full 5-year term.
दिल्ली से एक और नई किस्म की शुरुआत करना चाहते हैं। ये वीआईपी कल्चर खत्म करना चाहते हैं कि कोई भी लाल बत्ती अब दिल्ली सरकार की किसी की गाड़ी के ऊपर लाल बत्ती नहीं लगेगी, ना मुख्यमंत्री की गाड़ी के ऊपर लगेगी, ना मंत्रियों की गाड़ी के ऊपर लगेगी।
Kejriwal is the 8th Chief Minister of Delhi. Enthusiastic crowds streamed into the venue since morning itself. They joined Kejriwal in singing "Insaan Ka Insaan Se Ho Bhaichara," the same song from the 1959 film Paigam that Kejriwal sang at his swearing-in ceremony in 2013.
भाईचारा यही पैगाम हमारा.
Kejriwal assured his audience that his government will fulfill every promise, be it on electricity bills, water or women's safety.
लेकिन एक-एक काम ठोस करेंगे, मजबूती के साथ करेंगे. मैं आज इतना आपको वादा करता हूं, 24 घंटे काम करेंगे हम लोग, हमारी पूरी टीम. मैं, मेरे मंत्री, मेरे एमएलए 24 घंटे काम करेंगे.
Reaching out to industrialists with whom he has had a prickly relationship, Kejriwal promised them that if they paid up their taxes, his government would not allow them to go waste.
दिल्ली के सभी व्यापारियों से, सभी लोगों से आज मैं ये वादा करता हूं कि आपको कोई भी विभाग आके तंग नहीं करेगा, कोई भी विभाग आके आपसे पैसे नहीं लेगा. आप खुल के धंधा अपना बिजनेस करो. हम चाहते हैं कि आपका बिजनेस बढ़े, हम चाहते हैं कि उद्योग बढ़े, लेकिन अपना सब लोग अपनी इच्छा से पूरा टैक्स भर देना.
A key promise that did not fall go to unnoticed was on making people in the city feel safe. Kejriwal said incidents like the recent church attacks will not be tolerated. On Friday, the Prime Minister summoned the Delhi Police Commissioner after an incident of theft in a Catholic school.
पिछले कुछ महीनों में दिल्ली के अंदर कुछ घटनाएं घटी जिससे सारी दिल्ली के लोग बहुत नाराज हैं, बहुत गुस्से में. धर्मों के बीच में कुछ दंगे कराने की कोशिश की गई. एक चर्च को आग लगा दी गई. कुछ चर्च हैं जिनके ऊपर हमले किए गए, उन सारी ताकतों से मैं कहना चाहता हूं जो इस किस्म की राजनीति कर रहे हैं कि इस किस्म की राजनीति बंद कीजिए।
Unlike the last time, Arvind Kejriwal came in a grey-black Toyota Innova with a muffler wrapped around. The Ramlila Maidan sported a festive mood throughout the ceremony, at which Secretary D.M. Spolia announced that the president appointed Arvind Kejriwal as the Delhi's chief minister. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And we're joined by Aditi Fadnas. She's the political editor at Business Standards to help us understand this new Kejriwal, ma'am, Kejriwal 2.0 as many are calling it. How different is he from what we saw last time around, and what can we expect? What do you make of his speech today?
Well, what I noticed was a sense of the last time around he was kind of defensive, he was kind of aggressive. This time it was more self-assured, he was more self-confident and much more rooted. He said, for instance, don't judge me, don't judge me in 30 hours, don't judge me in 32 hours. I've got 5 years, so I'm going to work at my own pace. So don't rush me. He also said, the kind of house I live in, the car I drive in, for heaven's sake, don't let these things derail you. The third thing he said was that we are here for the long haul, and I will do things which you will like. So I noticed, a kind of emboldened, much more empowered Kejriwal, possibly a reflection of the majority that he's got this time.
All right, but in terms of messages, I mean, he also reached out to the central government this time around. He spoke, he talked about his meeting with the Prime Minister. Also about Ajay Makan and Kiran Bedi, he spoke about his political opponents during this election as well. So much more statesmanly Kejriwal appearing more than the street combatant that we'd seen last time around?
Generous in victory and hopefully not as enamored of public protests, because public protests were good, they vented steam, but ultimately that's all they were. They didn't achieve anything.
Right.
So much more committed to doing things. And the most important thing I found was that he is in no hurry, he says, to get AAP to expand its wings outside Delhi.
Right.
So that in itself sends a message that he has in fact told people that those who are thinking in terms of AAP being in Y state, Z state, X state, are speaking with a sense of arrogance,
Right.
and that should not be the AAP way. So now this is a problem, because what do you do with victory? Do you let it wither away on the vine, or do you exert that extra bit of effort and offer other people also an alternative in the shape of AAP? So it's a problem, it's an existential problem, and I think he has to come to terms with this.
All right, but very quickly also, ma'am, in terms of Kejriwal 2.0, the cabinet is not pretty much the same that it was last time around. The controversial names have been dropped: Somnath Bharti, Rakhi Birla, the ones who created a little bit of controversy in that 49-day government. So what do you make of that? A new look Kejriwal with his new team, Manish Sisodia being Deputy Chief Minister?
Well, I don't know if the portfolios of these people have been announced. And frankly, there is no such position as Deputy Chief Minister.
Okay.
It's just a notional thing. There is no constitutional post as Deputy Chief Minister, just as there's no constitutional post as Deputy Prime Minister.
Right.
So I don't know what that means, and whether it is in fact what has been announced, because as far as I know, portfolios have not been announced yet. So we have to see now what his colleagues get, and I'm sure there'll be an expansion. You can't work only with 6 ministers, so
Right.
I'm pretty sure there will be an expansion, and many other names will be announced as the days go by.
All right, Aditi Fadnas, thank you very much for joining us and helping us understand the new government that is taking charge in Delhi today, what it is setting out to do. Thanks very much for that. All right, moving on now. Along with Kejriwal, 6 other AAP members took oath as cabinet ministers today. The 7-member cabinet is one of the youngest, with an average age of less than 40 years. Chief Minister Kejriwal will not keep any big-ticket portfolio. He earlier held finance, water and power portfolios. Manish Sisodia took oath As the Deputy Chief Minister of Delhi, he will keep the urban development and education portfolios. He will have the additional charge of finance. The Home and Law Ministries will be with Jitendra Tomar. AAP's previous Law Minister, the controversial Somnath Bharti, has been dropped this time. Satyendra Jain returns as Health Minister. He will also head the Power and Industries portfolio. Gopal Rai, a former student leader who was once asked by Anna Hazare to leave a meeting after a public squabble, will take over as the Transport and Labour Minister. Sandeep Kumar, a software engineer, will be in charge of Women and Child Development. And Asim Ahmed Khan will head the Food and Civil Supply Ministry. Now moving on, ahead of the presentation of the Union Budget, the Prime Minister today pitched his government's Make in India campaign. He also invited US-based General Electric to manufacture ships in India while inaugurating the company's first manufacturing plant in the country.
Ahead of the Union Budget, the Prime Minister once again reaching out to investors, assuring that more reforms are on their way. Narendra Modi invited multinationals to make use of the large talent pool in the country.
मैं दुनिया के उद्योगकारों को विश्वास दिलाता हूं कि भारत एक ऐसी उर्वरा भूमि है, यहां एक ऐसा टैलेंटेड यूथ है कि आप यहां का मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कॉम्पिटिटिव वर्ल्ड के अंदर पूरी ताकत के साथ आप खड़े रह सकते हैं, आगे बढ़ सकते हैं और अधिक आगे बढ़ने की संभावनाओं को वहां पर शिलान्यास कर सकते हैं.
Inaugurating the multimodal manufacturing facility set up by the American engineering giant GE Corporation, Modi assured that his administration will improve ease of doing business.
और रेलवे सिर्फ यातायात का साधन नहीं, रेलवे भारत की इकोनॉमी का ड्राइविंग फोर्स बन सकती है. उस रूप में रेलवे इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को ले जाया जा सकता है. उसके मैन्युफैक्चरिंग के लिए भी बहुत सारी संभावनाएं पड़ी हैं. उसको भी बल देने का प्रयास हम करना चाहते हैं.
In a significant announcement, Modi also announced that number of clearances for setting up hospitality ventures will be brought down from the present prohibitive figure of 110 to just about 20.
और दुनिया के गणमान्य आर्थिक जगत के लोगों ने लिखा है कि आज विश्व में सबसे तेज गति से आगे बढ़ने वाली इकोनॉमी है, तो वो इकोनॉमी हिंदुस्तान की है.
The NDA government is presenting its first full budget on 28th February. There is much speculation that it could turn out to be a complete reform-oriented budget, given the horrendous dropping that the BJP faced in the last week's Delhi elections. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Now, in the upcoming Union Budget, financial strengthening of the civil aviation sector is expected to be a key focus for Finance Minister Arun Jaitley. The Aviation Ministry is seeking an additional 1,000 crore allocation to connect remote parts through the airline route. Let's take a look at what are the other measures expected.
Despite increase in air connectivity, air travel is still out of reach of a large number of aspirational Indians. Scheme for development of new airports in Tier 1 and Tier 2 will be launched for implementation through the Airport Authority of India and the PPPs.
In line with the Finance Minister's promise last year, people in far-flung places of Northeast are hoping the upcoming budget will take the first steps towards air connectivity for them.
Least subsidy model which will be brought in, or just more broad-based the route dispersal guidelines. So what would be the route taken is something that will need to be carefully worked out. The Naresh Chandra committee had suggested an economic model that you bid out these routes and the airline which demands the least subsidy may be allotted to the route. So maybe this is the time now to start considering those possibilities.
The Civil Aviation Ministry has sought an allocation of 1,000 crores to connect remote areas in the country. In the 2014-15 budget, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley allotted 9,474 crore rupees to civil aviation. Nearly 16% or about 6,500 crores went to Air India alone. The story was the same the previous year when Air India got 5,500 crores. Although Air India hasn't seen any profit in all the months the Modi government has been in power, it is expected to continue budgetary support just the same this year as well. As part of the national policy, the Civil Aviation Ministry wants to strengthen domestic airline sector by providing adequate infrastructure in airports in remote areas. Out of the 107 airports in operation, the Airports Authority of India incurs losses on 93 of them. As a result, airlines are forced to cut down services and stop flights to many of the cities. The Aviation Ministry wants an Essential Air Services Fund to compensate airlines operating in such non-performing routes.
Intent. So, yeah, and the Essential Services Fund is not mentioned at all. Essential Aviation Fund, which was mentioned earlier. What is essential services, what is regional services, all these things are in a way not there. So I think it's a very inadequate document.
The Civil Aviation Ministry draft policy is promoting an Essential Air Services Fund or a Regional Air Connectivity Fund. The fund is intended to ensure essential air services to remote and inaccessible areas, especially regions in the Northeast. Narendra Modi government wants to make good use of the public-private partnership model to provide air connectivity to the remotest part of the country. Industry is expecting a clear policy line on PPP model in the upcoming budget. With camera person Narayan, Rajkamal Rao, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, we'll slip into a very quick break right now, but coming up on the other side, swine flu is taking a toll in Rajasthan. 12 more deaths have been reported, taking the total toll to 142 this year. More on that on the other side. Welcome back. You're watching the news at 6. Now, another success for the Indian Navy. India saw a flawless launch and test firing of its 290-kilometer range BrahMos supersonic cruise missile today. The launch took place from the Navy's newest destroyer, INS Kolkata, off the Goa coast. The missile met all its designed parameters. BrahMos Chief Sudhir Mishra congratulated his team and the Indian Navy on the successful mission. First ship of its class, INS Kolkata, has the capability of firing the highest number of BrahMos missiles. The two-stage missile, the first one being solid and the second one ramjet liquid propellant, has already been inducted into the Army and Navy, and the Air Force version is in the final stage of trial. Well, more news and updates from across the country in Nationwide. Swine flu has claimed 12 more lives in Rajasthan, raising the toll to 142 this year, while 3 people succumbed in Jaipur, 2 died in Jodhpur's government hospital. Close to 1,900 patients have been tested positive for the virus in the state so far. Auction for coal blocks kicked off today for the first time. Corporate leaders like Ambani, Adani and Birla have queued up for 2 mines being offered on day 1. After clearing the technical bidding stage, entities from Reliance, Adani, SR, GMR, Vedanta and Aditya Birla groups became eligible to bid, one in Odisha and the other in Madhya Pradesh. From a Trinamool Congress MP, Srinjoy Bose was questioned again by the CBI today in the Sarada Chit Fund scam case. He was quizzed by the CBI for around 3 hours. He was earlier arrested by the CBI and later granted conditional bail in the case. This was his first visit to the CBI office after getting bail on the 4th of February. 3 crude bombs were found in a car that breached security at the UP governor's residence in Lucknow today. One person was taken into custody by the Lucknow police for trying to enter the high security zone in a car that contained 3 country-made bombs. Well, some international news now, and fighting has intensified in the Ukrainian border ahead of the much-awaited ceasefire set to begin tomorrow. Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko has said that the ceasefire agreement is in big danger even before it starts. At least 3 people were killed in the fresh fighting.
Gunshots rage on in eastern Ukraine, just hours ahead of the ceasefire set to begin on Sunday. Rockets hit a school in eastern Ukraine, killing a child and 2 others. Over a dozen were reportedly killed on Friday. The clashes continue despite a ceasefire agreement during the Minsk talks.
It is very challenging that Donetsk and Lugansk leadership also immediately after signing agreements, doubted that their implementations is realistic. For us, it was and is unacceptable that during meeting in Minsk, new 50 tanks, 40 artillery systems, and 40 armored vehicles arrived from Russia to separatists.
Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko said that it is an attack on the Minsk results. Meanwhile, the United States said that they are concerned by reports of heavy weapons coming across the border from Russia.
After what we reach in Minsk, this is not just an attack of Ukrainian civilian or of Ukraine living sector. This is attack of the Minsk results. And without any explanation, because unfortunately after Minsk, the offensive operation of Russia intensified significantly.
Russian units along the border with Ukraine are preparing a large shipment of supplies to pro-Russian forces fighting in eastern Ukraine. This is clearly not in the spirit of this week's agreement. All parties must show complete restraint in the run-up to the Sunday ceasefire, including an immediate halt to the Russian and separatist assault on Debaltseve and other Ukrainian towns.
The blame game continues on who is behind the shelling, as both separatists and the government accuse each other. Presidents of France, Russia, Ukraine, along with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, is expected to discuss the issue over the phone during this weekend. The United Nations Secretary Council will also meet in emergency session on Sunday to discuss the crisis. Bureau Report, Rajya TV.
Some more international news in Global Buzz now. Islamic State militants launched a suicide bomb attack on the US air base in Iraq. According to Pentagon, the militants were defeated by the Iraqi soldiers defending the facility, but the group captured an Iraqi town near the base. However, the US downplayed the fall of the town, which is within striking distance of the air base. The Canadian police today unfoiled a plot to carry out a mass shooting. 3 suspects were arrested in connection with the plot. A 4th suspect shot himself dead as the police forces surrounded his home. All 4 suspects had intended to go launch an attack at a public venue and then kill themselves. Motives of the plot is still unknown. Investigations are underway. At least 7 people have been killed after a Bangladesh ferry capsized yesterday. 2 more bodies were recovered by rescuers today. Coast Guard staff, along with local rescuers, are still searching for the others. The overloaded the vessel's engine abruptly shut down, triggering panic among 200 people on board. At least 16 people were killed and 22 others injured when a bus collided with a freight train in northern Mexico. Witnesses said that the bus ignored the signal at the railway crossing, which led to the mishap. Officials also said that the bus, with a capacity of 40 people, was overcrowded with at least 60 on board. All right, let's now talk about the cricket match that is on the nation's mind. That is India versus Pakistan tomorrow. Of course, the World Cup began today, in fact, with Australia and New Zealand winning their matches comfortably. But India will begin their title defense when they lock on with arch rivals Pakistan tomorrow at Adelaide in their first match in this World Cup. India will go into the match with an overwhelming 5-0 record against Pakistan in World Cups. India's never lost to arch rivals since the two teams were first pitted against each other in the 1992 edition in Sydney. Indian captain Mahendra Singh Dhoni today said that his players were well equipped to tackle pressure situations due to calm nerves and the experience of playing in big matches. He also downplayed India's poor run in Australia so far, assuring an improved performance in the next weeks. The World Cup hosts Australia and New Zealand made a winning start to their campaigns today. In the first match, New Zealand crushed Sri Lanka by 98 runs in Christchurch. In the second match, Australia comprehensively defeated England by 111 runs.
The much-awaited Cricket World Cup got off to a cracking start today. Host New Zealand handed Sri Lanka a convincing defeat in the opening match of the event at Christchurch. New Zealand posted an imposing 331 for 6, with both captain Brendan McCullum and Corey Anderson smashing half-centuries. Kane Williamson also chipped in with a useful 57 runs.
Yeah, it puts us in a great position. We've obviously taken down Sri Lanka, which is they always perform well at World Cups and at tournaments. So to take them down is, I guess, it's a nice feeling to be ahead of the 8 ball leading into the second game. And obviously we've got Scotland coming up, and they gave us a decent run for our money in Lincoln when we had a warm-up game. So we're not taking them lightly either.
Lankan bowlers were smashed all over the park, with Kulasekara and Malinga proving to be the most expensive.
I don't think this is Lasit's best bowling effort. So we believe he will come back strongly in the next few matches.
Sri Lanka faced a tough time chasing the target, losing 3 key wickets of Thirimane, Jayawardene and Sangakkara in quick succession. Thirimane was the lone batsman to offer any semblance of a fight, with 65 runs off 60 balls.
And that's pulled away nicely.
In the second match, Australia outshined England at the MCG. Australia scored 342 for 9 batting first. Opener Aaron Finch struck the tournament's first century with 12 boundaries and 3 sixes.
Tickled fine and a leap in the air, a punch of the air, and Aaron Finch goes through to 100 on his home ground. What a day.
Glenn Maxwell too joined the party, blazing his way to a 40-ball 66 runs. With wickets falling at regular intervals, England seemed completely out of touch during their chase. The first 2 wickets fell in the first 10 overs itself, with barely 50 runs on the scoreboard. Next to go were Ian Bell and Joe Root, failing to provide any working platform to the team at 66 for 4. James Taylor and Wokes provided England some hope with a solid partnership, but failed to see them through. Mitchell Marsh, who took 5 wickets for 33 runs, left England wounded. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Haddon's coming back and takes a good catch. Mitchell Marsh. That's 3 now.
Well, that's the news at 6. Goodbye.